Hey guys, Stephanie with AmericanMuscle.com here with these Whiteline Lowering Springs for 2015 and up S550 GT Mustangs. We're going to be talking about a few different things with these springs, but mostly we'll talk about what you can expect from these springs in both the performance and looks categories, and we're also going to talk about the install as well. I'll talk more about the install later, but you're looking at a 2 out of 3 wrenches in the difficulty meter. The Whiteline Lowering Springs are going to be a good option for those of you out there that are looking for a lowering spring for a daily driven car or a street car that's going to give a good drop, but that's designed to be used with the factory shocks and struts. These springs are made to provide balance with both OEM and aftermarket shock and strut setups, while a lot of other springs out there function better with aftermarket setups. These springs offer a drop of 1.3 inches in the front of the car and 1.1 inches in the rear. Now this is what I consider more on the standard side in the world of lowering springs for the S550. Currently, you tend to see that the majority of springs offer a standard 1-inch drop, and the largest drop that you'll find in a spring for the S550 is just over 1 inch. These springs offer a touch more than that in the front and in the rear. But even though that is the case, these are still going to be compatible with both the factory and aftermarket wheel and tire setups. The plus side of the S550 looking so good and responding so well to a little bit of lowering is that you can create a functional low, and by that I mean it's low enough to look good but not low enough to cause issues either on the tire or under the car. It's going to leave you with a very streetable car still. And of course, a lowering spring is going to lower the center of gravity to provide some handling improvements like reducing squat and body roll in corners and eliminating nosedive under hard braking. Just keep in mind that the drop of these springs will look a touch different depending on your exact wheel and tire setup. The other thing to consider when you're shopping for springs, besides the drop, is the ride quality. These springs do have a performance design, so they're made for street and race applications, but they do it without compromising ride quality, which means that they're going to be a good option for a street car. They don't have a harsh ride quality, but they are a firm spring. The ride is more stiff, and you do notice more road noise. Other than that, you'll just notice the other benefits that I mentioned earlier, the car having less body roll and being more planted overall. These are a progressive spring, which means that they'll be more forgiving on the street than, say, a linear spring would be. As far as price, these springs are going to cost between $200 and $300, which is right where the majority of other springs are falling as well. Of course, there are some springs that are either less expensive or more expensive than that, and even springs that are all across this price range. So the install here is going to take about 4 hours, and I'm going to call it a solid 2 out of 3 wrenches on the scale because you will need some knowledge to complete the install. So I'd recommend having a knowledgeable helping hand or taking this to a shop for the install if you haven't done this before, especially since it's always a good idea to get an alignment after the install anyway. This install can be done on jack stands if you don't have access to a lift, but as usual, a lift would be your best bet. You're going to need a few tools, including a spring compressor, so make sure you have that before you start the install. You're going to need to get down to the spring and strut assemblies, so everything like the wheels, the brakes, and the ABS lines will need to be moved out of the way so you can pull the assemblies out of the car. The spring compressor will help you remove the spring from the strut and install the new front springs, which are compressed and installed the same way. The strut assemblies go back in the same way they came out, and the install is the same for both sides. The rear is where things are a little different, but it's nothing crazy. Essentially, the IRS subframe will be dropped along with the rear shock mount so you can slide the rear springs out. Just like the front, the rear springs install the same way they were uninstalled. There's no surprises there. Your bump stops are slid onto the shock, followed by the factory dust boot. New springs can be installed, and the IRS subframe can be bolted back up, and that's about all it's going to take. Like I mentioned earlier, a fresh alignment after the install isn't a bad idea. Wrapping things up here, the Whiteline Lowering Springs offer a 1.3 and 1.1 inch drop in the front and rear respectively, and they're a performance-based spring designed for street and occasional track use. As always, I suggest you check these out more online for yourself. And for all things Mustang, keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.